On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Mary Elizabeth Porray. She is Global Vice Chair, Client Technology, and COO, Growth and Innovation at EY, and we're going to be talking about operationalizing emerging technologies. We're going to get into the workflow and processes, building from the ground up, making sure stakeholders and everyone is along for the ride, and how are we impacting some of those fundamentals of work that we're hearing about out there, and going to get some stories from Mary Elizabeth as well. But Mary Elizabeth, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. I'm pretty sure everyone knows what EY does, but can you just tell us at a high level what the company does do?
Sure. We're a professional services firm. We're one of what's called the Big Four, if people are familiar with that. It used to be the Big Eight, one of the accounting firms. But we're a multidisciplinary organization. So most of people, when they think about EY, think about our audit or tax services. But we actually do a lot in the advisory and consulting space, as well as strategic transactions. And we have, of our 400,000 people, over 100,000 people identify as technologists. So we're really a multidisciplinary organization serving some of the biggest clients in the world, and privileged to do so.
Absolutely. All right. So this one, we're going to be covering, obviously, emerging technologies and how do we actually get them to work for us. And, I'm sure AI is in this conversation because it is the conversation of the day. But when we start looking at just the business overall, and I like to mention that AI, while it's novel and it's going to have its own impact, isn't something where businesses have always had success. Technology is hard, and we've seen even simpler technologies have challenges within organizations. When we look at just a company that's trying to operationalize emerging technology, what are some of the things that people see the shiny and new, and what is it we're missing sometimes that makes it so hard?
I think the biggest thing that makes it so hard is the cultural norms that a company might have. If you go out to any company's website and you look at their values or look at their mission statement, you don't often see things around safe failure, experimentation, trying new things. You might see something like continuous improvement, for example, but you don't see something that's necessarily bold. And so I think employees need some permission in order to sort of lean into these emerging technologies. And I know that's something that we're really trying to do at EY, is to really get people to lean into what is new and to not let the fear of the unknown sort of paralyze them. Because I think non-movement is really the biggest distractor to these emerging technologies. It's not saying that we all have to go rushing toward them, but there has to be, a large material number in order to make the business impact of these emerging technologies.
Absolutely. And when we start looking at, I guess there's companies all across the maturity curve of where they're at with various technologies. With AI, we're seeing a lot of companies think that it will help them solve problems that they have struggled with in the past. I guess before we dive into that, is that possibly true? Is that a fallacy? Is there somebody going to be in for a rude awakening thinking that it is a magic wand?
I think it's fair to say we're in the hype cycle of AI. And so at the moment, it's more common for people to think that it could be the magic wand. And it's possible it could be for some distinct problem areas. Do I think it will be a magic wand for all business problems? Probably not. Could it be a magic wand for some small technical things? Sure, it could. I think that it certainly, though, is something that is pervasive. It's things that people are talking about. And again, you have to lean in to start. What I do think AI is going to enable us to do is to solve problems in a different way. I don't think it solves the problem, but what I'm most excited about, for example, if you think about a firm like ours, it's large. We serve 156 countries around the world, 400,000 people. We have a lot of processes, and we should, because we have those embedded in the organization. What I'm most excited about for AI, for example, for us, if you look at how we're applying it to ourselves, is the ability to reimagine the processes and to take some of the pain points away. So it's not that AI is necessarily solving the problem. I see it as the grease in the wheel to do things in a new way.
I love the way you put that. And I mean, it is. I mean, you guys are a very large company. You guys do have probably process sprawl as comes with growth to that size. When you look at the internal use cases. Obviously, you guys are a professional services firm. You guys do have a lot of people that have to be involved. We're hearing a lot about AI adjusting the way we work, right? What we've done for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, that is going to be changing. I think that change management is potentially more mentally taxing than the actual effect. We don't know that. I could be wrong.
Right.
But I feel like there's a component that is mentally taxing because we just don't know. It's that unknown. And having people hear things out in the market of what's going to happen and then imagining, well, that's dotted line to me. How do you, with something like this, how do you work with your stakeholders, with the internal teams to go, you know what, we do have this opportunity. It just might not be what you think because it, as you mentioned, it is still early.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't necessarily know. It's not a situation where we know exactly where we're heading. I mean, I've been talking about with our teams at EY, I'm old enough to remember when the internet was invented, right? When I started at EY, I did not have a computer. I shared a computer with a colleague. Those were scary times too. I mean, think about it. Those were massive changes as well. And yet we got through it. We needed more jobs. We needed more people to do the work, and they're just doing different work. I do agree with your comment though about mentally taxing. And I think if you look at workforces, across the world, people already have fatigue from COVID. It kind of took out the spaces between the meetings. We're doing a lot of things virtually. We're doing things back to back. We're working in new ways already. And those new ways, I think people have generally found more taxing. And so one of the things that I know we're doing at EY is we have something called Thrive Time, because what our people want most is time back, because they feel like everything is back to back to back to back. And to be honest with you, with AI being infused, it's going to get worse, because you may, for example, go to a meeting, and while you're at that meeting, your agent workforce is doing your day job. But then when you come back from the meeting, you still have to do the follow-ups from the day job that was being done by the second and third and fourth versions of you. So that exhaustion is very real. And so one of the things that we're trying to build in for our people, we know that AI is bringing us productivity, but that isn't so we can add on necessarily more work. It certainly makes us more productive, but it's also so we can create psychological space for us to be able to think, to process, to connect with other people, to build teams, to build new skills. And I am a huge believer that if we don't carve out that time that we call Thrive Time for you to be able to upskill, reskill, refill your energy tank, then we're not going to be able to make it in this new, highly connected, AI-driven world.
That's actually fantastic. And when you are looking at internal use cases, when you're trying to identify those opportunities, I think one of the hardest things when we're looking at AI is how do we start re-envisioning something, because we've had a mindset of problem solving for such a long time. I guess from your perspective, like when you are trying to look at that, you're trying to re-envision that org and you're trying to re-envision processes. There's so many places. I mean, as you mentioned, you guys are big. You guys have lots of processes. I mean, it could be whack-a-mole to pick the right one or the right use case. Like, have you seen something that helps? Or, I mean, obviously I've heard lowest hanging fruit, which could be then thousands of processes. But I mean, you have to sometimes start someplace, don't you?
You do. And I think, as leaders, one of our responsibilities is to stay in touch with what the pain points are of the people who work for us. And in our case with EY, for our clients. And what's great is we try to create, a 360 feedback loop where we're constantly asking clients, how does the experience of working with us feel? Are you getting the right expertise? Is it working at the right speed? Is it meeting the metrics that we set out? Are we meeting the milestones? We apply the same thing internally. So, the way that I, as a leader, get the best information about where do we start is obviously, as a COO, I put my financial hat on. You do want to look at order of magnitude and what the return's going to be. But I look at what our customers are telling us. What are the users saying? And, if the process you think should take a week and in your heart of hearts that it takes 8, that's a great place to start. So you kind of know what the pain points are. I mean, look at something as simple as this, right? Mobile phone. you know what apps you don't really love to use, or where the glitch is when you're looking for a contact, or a new version rolls out and you're like, oh, I don't know about that. Sometimes it's just discomfort, but there's a lot of pain points. And leaders who really have their ear to the ground and the right listening posts, they know where those are. And where I personally want to focus is where the greatest returns for employee engagement and satisfaction can come, and most importantly, where the greatest gains can come for our clients.
Absolutely. I like that a lot. And I guess when we're looking at, the thought of launching one of these things,
yes,
and getting a proof of concept, getting a pilot, getting it moved down the line, I mean, let alone getting into production. We'll leave it at production. But there's a notion of launching something and not really understanding what you want it to do. Obviously, I won't even mention ROI because I think that's even a step ahead. But there is a real danger of launching something, it not getting adopted, it not getting the right traction, it doesn't get, change management hasn't happened, and we are potentially right now in the market seeing lots of pilots that haven't typically done well. Is that a potential choking point for something like AI? Because obviously the technology is cool and great, but we do have to get past pilots and into production to see those, I guess, ROI at some point.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you in our own client technology organization, EY, I would say overall as a company, we love a pilot approach because we work in a matrix. So we have geographies, we have service lines, we have industry groups. And so we know that if we take, one of our larger geographies and one of our smaller geographies and we pilot something, if it works in both of those, then it can probably work for the world, and we re-roll it out. I'm not so much a fan as much for AI in terms of a pilot, because I don't think AI is something that you dabble in, if that makes sense. And I think the real returns come from actually fundamentally changing the process and fundamentally changing how people work on that process. I mean, one thing that's different with AI is that essentially every employee from intern to the CEO becomes a manager of some kind, right? There will be a day very soon where an organizational chart will show humans reporting to you as well as agents. And it's not going to delineate whether you're a senior leader or not. It's just going to be the case. So I think more time actually needs to be spent on what are the benefits to the underlying process by applying these emerging technologies like AI, and what are the benefits for people? Because look, change is really hard. I used to lead the change management practice here at EY, and I would say to clients, the most common comment I would get is, I love change. You go first. No, nobody wants to change, right? It's just human nature. And so there needs to be the right carrots and sticks to get people to move in that direction. And if employees can see a benefit to having AI, and they don't just think it's, my company is going to make more money off of me, right? It can't just be about productivity. It has to be about their experience, their career, their access to new ideas, their access to new teams, their access to more influence and impact. So I see AI as a force for good from that perspective. Now, the flip side could be very scary. That's why we're also hyper focused at EY about security, scalability, safety. We work in a regulated environment. It's absolutely imperative that our AI is for good. And so we spend a lot of time making sure that's the case as well. So I would say, you asked, how did we decide, what pilots would we look at? We looked at both sides of that coin. We said, what are areas that can increase the safety, security, and trust that our clients feel from us by using this technology? And then what can benefit our clients and our employees so that they have a better working experience, however long they're with us?
It's really interesting because as you're talking about that, I was thinking about leadership in this case, where we haven't seen many phases of technology where leaders articulate the technology itself, right? I mean, obviously AI is something we hear from the business side, we hear from the boards, we hear from a lot of people, not just within the technology teams. When you look at that phenomenon, where all of a sudden now, maybe 20 years ago, no one said, "Get me to the cloud. you need to put me on the latest cloud server." They just didn't care. I mean, it wasn't something that even was remotely talked about. It was an efficiency born on the technology side that enabled other capabilities. But in this case, you do hear people thinking, "Oh, I wonder if AI can help me," and they're reaching out to technology teams and they're asking about it. Does that change anything here? Because it does. I don't know. I don't want to even say it's got its hype around it. It's real. It's here. I get that. But does that change anything from a leadership stakeholder strategy perspective when you have a stakeholder that's coming to you and actually saying, I'm curious about this, and you have to be like, hey, time out, wait, we don't even know for the data. I mean, then you have to get into the technical world, which they don't care about. I guess I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on that.
I think, listen, I'll just speak from our own organization. Obviously, those in EY who work with us in client technology know us well and know what to come to us for, and we have a brand, and that's been great. But we definitely are experiencing a halo effect from AI because they're like, oh yeah, that client technology team will know all about that. I'm going to go talk to them. So we're feeling very popular. We're feeling like, okay, this is fabulous. We have auditors coming and talking to us about, what they can do to better serve their clients in a safe way. We love that. What I think it's doing, what I think AI in general is doing is, let's be honest, having both been on the business and the technical side, there is something to the myth that the business and technology teams don't speak to each other. Now, what I would say is they do speak to each other, but they just aren't speaking the same language. So they just keep talking and nothing's going in the other side, if you know what I mean. AI to me has sort of been the great denominator, if you will, because I think the business, because it's something everyone can experiment with. Like, Amir, if we wanted to, we could just do an aside and you and I could just sit down and build 10 agents right now. We could do it in 10 minutes, right? It is very accessible. It's like this, right? It's right in front of you. So it isn't, whereas the cloud was like, ooh, that sounds complex. I don't know what that is. Because you can use AI in your personal life and you can use it at work as well, everybody sort of knows enough to feel that they're confident to speak about it. So what I'm really excited about is I see for the first time a universal language for the business and IT, to speak one language and to do things together and to ideate solutions together. And yes, there are super technical parts to the AI and, how it's all going to be orchestrated and, what's underneath and what LLM you're using and how you're checking that. The business doesn't need to be concerned with that per se, but those strategic conversations can actually be held in the same language. And that to me is new. I think it's a new era and I'm excited about that.
I actually want to tie this back to something you mentioned at the beginning, where it's going to help us solve problems differently. And I joke with people. I go, I'm sure if you go to any CPA and tell them, I'm going to take away your spreadsheets, they'd be up in arms. And if you went back 20 years and said, I'm going to take away from your calculator, they'd be up in arms. If we went back, I don't know when the abacus was invented, but if you went back so many years and you told that person, I'm going to take away your abacus, they would be up in arms. And I kind of look at that as an example of how we as humans have evolved to rely on taking away complexity where it doesn't add value. And I think, you mentioned other, tech booms, and we've seen them actually add jobs. I personally believe, I'm going to look at the positive side of AI, and I believe that technology allows us to become more efficient and grow into areas that we couldn't. Not that it does take away stuff that we shouldn't be doing. Like, again, I would not debate that anybody would want to remove their calculator spreadsheets and doing tax returns. But when you're looking at that and you're looking at capabilities, and we're looking at being early, some people are like, this is the first pitch in a baseball analogy of the first inning, and we're still so early. When you look at that early component and you look at strategy, and I've heard a lot about we need muscle memory to learn how to even use this. When you look at those combinations, it's a very unique situation, because not a lot of times you'd say, hey, we're just going to go kick this idea around because we just need to. You'd be like, well, there's no value and it costs us X, we're not going to do it. In this case, is that potentially the right thing? You got to build that muscle memory. You got to get out there and just build and fail to understand where the opportunities really lie.
I mean, we think so. If we are one of the largest Copilot license holders in the world. 90% of our employees have been trained in AI. Every single employee has access to Copilot. Our mantra is, we're going to give you the tools. We need to experiment. We need to learn together. And this is pervasive. One of the things that's unique about what's happening with AI is Generally, in professional services, what we see is that our clients are going through a seismic change, but we may not be. So we can say, let us help you through that. What's interesting is we're all in this together, right? Our clients, EY, personally, we're all figuring this out at the same time. It's all unfolding in real time. And so I think you have to lean in and do it. We also built our own large language model called EYQ. I do not think we will continue with our own large language model in the future. We don't need to. There are companies that do that. But we felt to really understand generative AI, we needed to build one. And it may not be the best one, but what I can tell you is we knew that there was pent up demand for it because EYQ at EY is the second fastest, highest adopted thing we have ever rolled out in the history of the organization. After what? Outlook. So email, chat. I mean, that's a phenomenal stat in my mind. I mean, I not in a million years thought that the uptake would be right behind Outlook. I mean, I knew people would want to use it, but I didn't think it would be like that. Obviously, EY is a little bit different in that most of our employees are in the younger generations. That is our model. We like to always be bringing in fresh talent. And obviously, the younger you skew, the more generations are leaning into this. So the challenge is really for leaders like myself. It's not necessarily for new people joining the workforce. They're already AI native to some degree. But the take up rate has been phenomenal. But our view at EY has been give people the tools with the appropriate guardrails and safety built in, which we've done. We have that all on our platform, so it's all secure and safe. And then let them figure out where to go. And some of the things that we've seen has just been phenomenal that our people have come up with.
That's a really interesting stat because it kind of fits the whole abacus calculator spreadsheet narrative. And it's so funny. I think we could go back and we could draw these analogies of handwritten letters to faxes to emails to chat. And I think when you start looking at is AI just an evolution of all the software we've seen, right? It requires breakthroughs from all the other technologies, like a little bit of a Russian doll scenario. Like you need those earlier technologies to get here. It's not like we could have just poof gotten here. And I look at business and I look at how they have typically looked at technology, invested in technology, had a relationship with technology. And every company is now a tech company as well, right? So that's the other caveat. Every company believes they're a tech company, which is fine. I think every company is a consumer of tech, so they have, when you look at those dynamics and all those intersections, and you look at yourselves at EY, and you just mentioned this uptick in the chat right behind Outlook, when you look at that, is there, and I don't know if there's a roadmap, but I'm just kind of curious. A lot of times you have leaders that put the roadmap together where we want, where we see the technology going. With something like this, with something like AI, it's moving so quickly. Can you actually look too far out, or is this a case of, you do have to have a vision, but you can only be so concrete because in 6 months, we might just throw all that away.
That's exactly what we have said, is that we have a North Star vision. That doesn't necessarily change, but we aren't putting out, here's all the tactics, here's the in-year plan, here's the next year plan, because it's just changing too quickly. Instead of investing in getting all the details right, what we're investing in is helping our people to lead with ambiguity and to be okay with the fact that it isn't all going to be written down step by step like it used to be. This is the new normal. And that our job is to be agile and nimble. And like I said, through Thrive Time, get yourself comfortable with knowing that we know the destination, but how we might travel there is not yet mapped for us. And that's okay. That's okay. But that's new muscle memory for us to build, because in general, the model is the leader tells us where we're going. They tell us how to get there and we follow and go. This is different. Now, and we always say, oh, AI is so different. It's so different. I agree with you. I think it's more like the Russian doll. I think it is a nested, new, pervasive thing. I can tell you when I've been through these other changes, when the computer came out, this was different. When the internet came out, this is different. When digital came out, this is different. Each one has its flavor, but I do suspect with hindsight, looking back long from now, We might just say it was another phase of the evolution. I think about myself personally, just a quick story. My father was in business and he retired about 10 years ago, and he prided himself on the fact that he never made a PowerPoint slide. He drew it out on paper. He gave it to his assistant. She produced the presentation. Okay. I pride myself on the fact that I was a process improvement consultant. That's how I grew up. My entire livelihood was creating PowerPoints to tell and show clients, here's your current state, here's your future state, here's how it can be better. Probably about 6 months ago, I was at an AI conference and I was watching kind of the art of the possible. And I went, I've become my father. PowerPoint is obsolete. All the months and months and months of time that I spent creating these beautiful decks, I can now create in 3 minutes, right? So, and I, you know what I said to myself? I'm obsolete and that's okay, because we're moving on to something else. That had its era, that had its point in time, just like my father writing his slides out had its point in time. And guess what? My father's now in his 80s and he's the largest user of AI that I know, my own employees included. He is just a fanatic about using it for everything in his world. So it goes to show you can teach the old dog new tricks. I'm learning myself, but I do think we're just in different eras. What is interesting about this moment in time is because we don't know exactly what it's going to be, it makes us feel a certain way. And there's a lot of opinions and there's a lot of fear. And what I say to my organization is you cannot let the fear paralyze you, because it's those that are going to lean in that are going to make the turn.
I love that. I love the example of the PowerPoints. Like it fits exactly. I think you and I think the same about this, and I do think when we look back, and I don't know when that'll be, I think we'll look back and the dotted lines will connect, and we'll be like, I see where I spent the time because you're not spending. And again, I mean, just if we were to just look at your PowerPoint example, I mean, anyone who's put together a good deck that's proud of it, they spend a decent amount of time. I mean, 5 hours, 10 hours, 50 hours, and that time is spent, and no one goes, I got so much value out of creating that. I have not heard one person that said that was the valuable part. It's the icing, but that's not the value part. And I think what we don't see, because we're so mired in process that doesn't have value, is we don't see the value we produce within that chain, which I think, going back to leadership, people have to start highlighting that, because people are going to need to know, you know what, this is actually the value you do provide. We don't need you to do X, Y, Z. We need you to start focusing on this stuff. And all of a sudden, we're not shoeing horses anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
I mean, I can tell you I was a little precious about my PowerPoints. I'd be like, this was the major deliverable for 6 months, But you're right. I wasn't holding on to the PowerPoint because it was the PowerPoint. I was holding on to it because of the impact and the value and the relationships that I made with my client, and that it helped their business and it helped to propel them forward. PowerPoint was just a tool to get there, And so, but we hang on to those because we associate it with the feeling at that time. And we'll hold on to AI in the same way. You just can't, I just think you just can't see it right at this moment.
I agree with that. That's I 100% see that. And I guess maybe maybe a last question here for you. When you're looking at these transformations and you're looking at the successes, I think the one thing that's very important is to making sure that the narrative, the story behind them, all those are articulated to the org. Because at a company as big as EY, I mean, there's a lot of people that are probably sitting there going, hey, this could take my job, right? And all of a sudden, no one wants employees that are not focused because of fear. I guess when it comes to promoting the positive side of this, the correct messaging, the fact that here's the strategy, here's the innovation, here's how it helps you, I think there's a lot of art in that. I guess, what have you seen that helps promote that? Obviously, you threw out the stat about chat right behind Outlook, but when it comes to promoting these stories of, hey, here's the positives we're seeing, here's the good things we're seing, here's how it's helping you, how have you seen things work?
I'm glad you asked that, because actually earlier this morning, I had an all hands call with my organization, and we spent the hour sharing how it's working and where people are seeing benefits and positive effects and where they're getting hyped and excited themselves. And I think it's really important to share those stories and to share them in a positive way. One of the things that's a danger in this AI world is that you can become very siloed and be working, most of the day, perhaps with agents versus people. That human connection is super important. I think it's more important than it's ever been, especially in the post-COVID era. And sharing the positivity, the inspiration, the excitement. I mean, in a way, I say to my team, like, get in on the hype. Hype it like crazy. Make it fun. Make it exciting. I mean, we have a saying in our organization, if it's fun, it gets done. And I think AI can actually inject a lot of fun as well. It allows creativity. It allows curiosity. It allows risk taking. I mean, these are all things that people love to do that generally companies don't necessarily want you to do, right? They want you to follow in a line. So again, as a regulated business, as long as we have the guardrails and the safety there, what I am inspiring our teams to do is to really lean in and just give it a whirl. But to make sure as they lean in that they're doing it purposefully. What I think AI is not is something you can just kind of do around the edges. It's not something you dabble in. And if you're not fundamentally changing the process or changing the experience, it's not really worth doing. That's why the pilots, I think, are a little bit different in this case. You got to go a little bit deeper in order to get the reward. And then the last thing I would say we're doing is we're creating, back in the day, even in the 90s, we had like affinity groups where it's like, oh, I'm an SAP person, or I'm a cloud person, or I'm a data person, and they would get together and talk. We're doing something similar in the AI space where, if you're really, really excited about a certain part of the product development lifecycle, you can join, an affinity group or a community. And we set aside time to talk about how is AI impacting your part of the world. And what's great is we connect these little communities and societies together, and all of a sudden you've transformed the entire product development lifecycle, right? If you knit that all together. So we try to let people go where they individually want to go, but then my job is to collectively inspire the organization to lean in and to try things that are different. And most importantly, I remind people that, like any habit, it has to be constant, right? They say it takes 30 to 90 days to form a habit. You've got to do it every single day. It's really a big mindset and behavior shift. And then before you know it, you're doing it and you're off and running, right? So I don't think there's we talked at the very beginning of this conversation, is this the magic wand? I don't think there's a magic wand that you can wave, unfortunately, for change management. I think it's strong leadership and, setting the tone from the top, walking the talk as a leader, and allowing people to do things in a different way that are going to bring beneficial results to clients and employees.
Hey, Elizabeth, that's fantastic. I was like, oh darn, we have a whole another episode around those affinity groups. Don't ask another question. I love it. That's a whole episode in of itself, because there's like a billion questions of something like that. So that's fantastic. Honestly, I love the fact that that is something that is in the forefront. It is something you're trying to bring everyone along for the ride, which is, I think, something that we kind of talked about, that change management, because it's so hard, and I think it is a scary time. And I think that sounds really exciting that everyone has an opportunity to get closer.
I may have a different view than others, but I personally think it's going to take every single person we have and then some. I think it's, you talked about this new kind of mental load. I do think it's going to take us working together in new ways more than ever. And the opportunities are endless. I couldn't be more excited about it.
Fantastic. Mary Elizabeth, if somebody does want to learn more, somebody wants to hear a little bit more, I mean, obviously we know EY is large. Is there a way of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you can go out to ey.com, and we have a great section on everything we're doing in the technology space. Like I said, the average person may come out and look at our audit and tax services, but we do quite a lot in technology, multi-billion-dollar business in technology itself. And I'd be happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn as well, and look forward to it.
Absolutely. I do appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for this episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think we had a great conversation with Mary Elizabeth. She walked us through operationalizing, a lot about AI, but how do you get that into play? How do you bring people along for the ride, manage change management, affinity groups? We covered a lot of ground. I thought there's a lot of insights. So please share this episode with somebody else who might also benefit from it. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.